All right. Hi, everyone. So, in this lesson, we're going to be talking about what makes up a good business. All right. No, I'm just kidding. We are going to talk about it eventually, but we're going to talk about first of how you should construct your portfolio, right? So, in this lesson, you guys are going to be learning also what makes up a great, strong business, at least like a very basic fundamental approach. And, these portfolios are going to have baskets of wonderful top businesses. See, like, these are complete brands. I think everyone knows these businesses. You have Apple, Coca-Cola, Microsoft, JP Morgan, Procter and Gamble, and Bank of America. And you're going to have a portfolio like this comprised of many different types of businesses, right? So there's actually many different ways to construct your own portfolio to invest. One of the practical ways that we're going to show you in this lesson is actually about diversification. So we're going to primarily talk about the diversification in this lesson. And the other lessons, we'll talk about several other ways to invest. But in this lesson, we're going to focus on diversification. When you diversify your holdings, you're inevitably reducing your total risk. The reason is because, look, you never can know if the business you choose can last as long as you think sometimes. And it still has that small chance to underperform for a few years by any impacting macroeconomic factor. So diversifying your investments is the best way to it's really the best way to maintaining a positive percentage performance in your portfolio almost all the time, even when the markets are going down by 20%, right? Because look, even one side of the sector, because this happens frequently, when one side of the sector of businesses are widely affected, like let's say banks that are highly cyclical, that are prone to interest rates in the short term and inflation, that makes it a much more cyclical type of industry or type of business, most of all, towards macro events. So if banks aren't doing well by performance, maybe technology can be doing well while banks aren't, or maybe consumer defense might be solid, right? This is the effective approach of diversifying your holdings so that you can always maintain a positive portfolio percentage performance almost all the time despite the markets coming down sharply. Of course, this will affect your gains, but net in total, because you're widely spread it out per industry and sector, you're not going to be as affected if let's say healthcare came down or consumer retailing came down or anything else, right? Because you still have industrial or technology too and financial to balance out that portfolio and make it mostly positive still. So while one sector is going down, another sector can be going up, right? And you're going to be spread it out across all, not every single sector, but almost all the different sectors. That way, if you invest in the top businesses, you're always most likely going to be one, overperforming the S&P 500, and two, you're going to mostly maintain a positive percentage performance almost all the time every year. Now, you do want to keep in mind that obviously diversifying is not invincible, meaning that it's not going to give you a negative percentage sometimes, right? That doesn't exist. Nothing can give you always a positive performance. I don't know who the hell made that up, to be honest, because that's literally a complete fantasy to think that your portfolio is never going to be negative. No, your portfolio has to be negative because that's how the stocks market works. There's no such thing. You will have a negative percentage a very short few amount of times, but I would say it's more than a 90% chance that you're going to be overperforming hugely compared to the S&P 500. What that means is, let's say that the S&P 500 is down 20%. What I mean is that it's negative 20% from, let's say, from the beginning of the year till now. But let's say that your portfolio is up 10% of a 10% gain. What that essentially means is that you're actually outperforming the market by 150%, because 20% to get back to 0% takes 20%. And that's about double, right? That's literally double. That'd be basically 40%. And since you're making 10%, technically the difference between your percentage to the S&P 500 is actually 30%, right? So if you grab 50% divided by 20, it would be 150%. Now, many of you, some of you might be, well, like, okay, whoa, you kind of lost me here. All right, let me explain. The reason why I said 50% is because, look, if the market was going down by 20%, how much percentage does the market have to go up in order to break even? Well, 20%. And also, 20%, if something's going down to 20% and it goes back up to 20%, technically, if you bought there, you made 20%, right? And you're actually making 100% of that 20% down, right? Because that's basic math. It's the same thing like this. If the market was going up by 20% and then it went up to 40%, that's a 100% gain. Pretty simple, right? Over here, that's what I'm talking about. Now, this amount is just for your calculator, right? Technically, you would do 30% divided by 20. But this is for your calculator so you can understand, right? Because if you take the difference between 20% and negative 20% and a 10% gain, that's a difference of 30%, right? So what's 30% divided by 20? It's 150%. You see? So if you construct your portfolio well, A lot of people don't know that, but it's really that simple. I mean, it's no different like this. If the market's going down by 50%, right, and then you're making 25% gain, then you're outperforming the market by 150%, right? Because 75 divided by 50, that's 150%. If you construct your portfolio well, though, you can possibly have it outperforming the market by 400%. I actually last year, because I have a portfolio like this, I was able to maintain positive when the market was going down. I think the market was going down by somewhat 4%, something like that, 4%, and I was positive about 16%, something like that. You can see that that's like a big percentage of difference because we're talking about a 400%. Why? What's the difference between -4 to +16? It's about 18, right? So what's then 18 divided by 4? There's your answer. That's about like a little bit more than 400%. Now, how should I diversify my portfolio then? Well, that depends on how well you know companies. But a general rule of thumb is to have a portfolio somewhat like this, depending on your risk tolerance. So really, this is the best approach, I would say, in diversifying, which you have large growth, you have predictable, you have speculative growth, you have turnarounds, you have dividends, you have deep value, and you have ETFs, right? For speculative companies or turnaround companies, so you guys don't know, if you guys don't know this, a turnaround company is a company that's you're hoping that it will turn around, right? So what that means is that if a company is losing a lot of money, but you have so much, you see that there's so much value in their products or services in the companies, on top of that, very well managed, you do believe that that negative revenue or negative income is going to turn around very sharply and start to become very valuable. It's a thing that's underseen. Speculative companies can be somewhat the same thing, but not as extreme compared to turnaround companies. For speculative companies or turnaround companies, those will always be the lowest allocation you should ever put, because by their business models and structures, they tend to be more dangerous to not earn more money and potentially going under. And that's because they don't have a solid reoccurring product or service yet that people have preferred to buy for a while, compared to many built companies with a track record and dominance in field, to having a built huge moat empire. A moat, so you guys can know, because maybe some of you might know what a moat means. A moat means, think of moat like a protection layer and dozens of reasons of impenetrable facts that a company will make more money, right? So a moat can comprise of brands, networking effect, high switching cost, most of all, high unique product value or high unique service value, high management value, dominance in fields, monopoly power, all these things. Another part is also a branding network effect. So what that means is that, let me give you a really great example. No one's going to tell you, if you're going to search up, like, let's say, like, okay, where can I find aspen trees, right? Where can I find that? So where will you search this up? You're not going to search this up in the internet. You're going to search it up in where? In search. That's what you said. Where are you going to search it? A lot of people say, I'm not going to try to search this on the internet. People say, like, I'm going to Google this, or I'm going to Google that. I'm going to Google this. That's a high branding networking effect. People use in their lingo more of the brand's name more than the actual use of the activity of what it's called. Another great example of this is, like, probably not to this effect, but still it's super effective. People don't say a lot of the times, oh yeah, I want to drink like a soda, right? Or a cherry soda. Many people said, give me a Coke, or I want to drink a Coke. I want to drink a Coca-Cola. Many people substitute soda for Coca-Cola, and it's an independent product. That's a branding effect, okay? So just so you can understand what a moat means. So back to what I was saying. Yeah, they have potentially going under, and they don't have a solid reoccurring product for, speculative turnaround companies, yet that people have preferred to buy for a while, compared to many of these built companies with a long track record and dominance in the field, that they already have a wide, big moat empire and reliability and networking effect on product, service value, or added management values that keeps customers coming in and almost impossible to get out because of no incentive motive available by that PS value, which is the product or service value with additional but optional management value. That altogether has made, established, and enhanced that brand, which often makes the business untouchable by a most part. And also, let me add on to this. A moat can also, because I forgot to say, a moat also is very effective when it has low capex. Low capex stands for low capital expenditures. And that's a big benefit for a company because it doesn't restrict their cash flows. It doesn't restrict their cash increasement with their income or their cash flows, their free cash flows, because they don't have a business that's highly required you to reinvest back heavily into the operation or the business just to get the operations running, just to pay back the operating expenses, like to pay back the machines, the material through the machines, right? A high capital expenditure business will require a significant amount of the income that you took out and reimburse it back again, because that's how it keeps running in the business. If you don't put money into these expenditures, you're not going to get any money out. So that's called a necessity item for operations. And where if those operations are too costly, that's going to limit the amount of growth and increase that business can make in more cash flow or net income, right? A lot of those businesses that have a high capital expenditure will be airlines, the automobile market, industrial companies. Yeah, that's like pretty much it. There's other companies, but those are the ones that tend to be usually the highest capital expenditures. All right, so let's start with the first one. Let's start with large growth. So large growth companies. Large growth companies are businesses growing at an excelling solid rate and expected to do so in the future more. They have developed products or services and are continuing to develop products or services that are in huge demand, from having values such as features, the model, the compatibility of the product or service, or the fantastic user interface of it. And also, it can be comprised in a highly developing industry in demand and ongoing demand. Like right now, it's AI, cloud, enhanced compute networking, and intelligent edge. Mostly, these are established companies with a dominance on industry or non-mimicable companies on industry too. They're comprised in several industries. These companies can range from technology, from communication services, and consumer discretionary. Now, of course, this can change in the future. Right now, these sort of highly innovative sectors could be changed with other sectors in the future. So it depends on the time that you're viewing this. But in any ways, these companies tend to have a lot of demand just because of the consistent innovation and change that it impacts a lot of the consumer behavior in the world. That by this, it comprises actually a lot of speculative companies too. And that's the reason why I call this the hot sector, that everyone wants to jump on the wagon because they think of how important it will be and change the world. Now, this sector is not in a bubble as of right now, but this can change in the future if there's more unprofitable companies or companies unstable to reach the promises they've made before, or not able to make the promises that they gave in return to their investors. Like the dot-com bubble. That's what happened to the dot-com bubble, right? But that's not going on as of right now. And I don't think it's likely, as long as there isn't more of this sort of irrational hype for, let's say, AI, for example, that you're willing to put in stupid greed practices to just generate more money because it's such a simple idea. That's not a good way to make business, right? And I made an example here. This is a great example of this. This is a representation of the company, okay? And this maze represents all the companies in the industry that have to go through this maze. These are the type of companies that when they make a product, they're able to exceed the process and simplify it, and where the consumer can easily buy more because it's such a great product from its great value, that instead of making this whole maze, they can easily just step across in maybe 5 years from making net income $2 billion to now $4 to $5 billion. They basically more than duplicated their net income in just 5 years. Right, that's really like about almost 25% gain in per year. That's really good. And over here is the same example, right? A company, just a bigger company, let's say that it's making $30 billion. They're able to cut out the process. And this product is also innovative as too, because it shows like that sort of demand. But most of all, not from its, let's say it's highly innovation, but it's most of all its product value from its essential business, from its, of course, it's innovation, but it's most of all its incremented value, that it has a uniqueness to the product. It has a simplification. It has a better compatibility. It has a branding effect, right? It has most of all, I like to comprise all the product values, whether it's the features, the compatibility, the user interfaces, that's convenient for a lot more people and that isn't able to be, let's say, mimicked at all, and also able to enhance actually now innovatively to make things better. All this is comprised. That's why they're able to step across this maze at just a few steps compared to everyone trying to loop around to see how do they get the product, how to get the value that they have to go through an exact way to get the product out there, right? These are the type of companies that I really like, that can just step across all this maze and make in 5 years 100% more of their net income by just keep doing what they're doing, right? Nothing like so highly innovative that they're going to change the world. No, just keep doing what they're doing. People just keep consuming. If they change the world, better, but I don't always look for companies like that because they tend to be more speculative. Now, this is my favorite one, predictable companies, right? If you see this graph, I'm going to explain this. These are businesses that are so obvious that are going to make more money and continue to do so in the future, that it's virtually assuring, knowing that you're going to die as a big asteroid is about to hit Earth, right? You're so sure that the business is going to make more money and continue to do so, that it's as sure as like you were in the planet and the asteroid was breaking through the atmosphere and it was the size of China and Russia combined, that you know for sure that Earth is gonna explode. We're for sure gonna die. That's the type of surety you need to have in the business. Literally up to that point, like, oh yeah, that's gonna happen. Not because you think, right? It's not a business that you guess and can't think possibly it won't make more just because you see it's a high reputable company from guessing because you just look at it. No, you only can see a business this reassuring from this example by only doing the actual due diligence and seeing all the aspects. That's the case for all investments you will ever do. These are businesses that are so easily predictable and such a cinch that they will continue to make more money in more than 30 to 40 years. Now, this is not by industry. I do not invest in this from the industry. You want to invest in this by the business, solely from the business, on how great their products are or their services are. Right? When I talk about services, I'm not talking about management, right? A service company could be similar to like, let's say Adobe. Adobe doesn't give you products. Adobe gives you a service. What's the service there? You pay them a certain amount for subscription to use their software, right? So they're selling software as a service, right? It's not a product that you're going to use essentially for yourself, but it's more of a service so you can help make something better. So I need to clarify that so you won't get confused. So you think like it's management or something like customer service. No. It's just service as selling, like they're selling a service to you. And also when I talk about it's solely on how great their products or services, those are where those type of specific products that are so dominating, or specific services, those are the ones that should comprise the value of the whole company. And based on that value of the whole company, you need to see it if that product or service is so dominant compared to any other, right? That's how predictable it is. Specifically, those specific services that are for sure such a cinch that no one's copying them, that they're completely innovative from that. Not even innovative, but they just keep doing what they're doing. They can keep making money from that specific product. Of course, it's better if they have all the products that they sell always make the most revenue for them, but that doesn't usually tend to happen. Let me give you an example. Like Apple, as of right now, Apple's main valuable product or service is mostly its iPhones. There's nothing in the world that can ever come close to iPhones. So that's the highly valuable product. That's the product you want to analyze deeply and invest mostly based on that product. Of course, and then based on the business, but I would say mostly like more than 60 to 70% because of that product. Probably even more, up to 80%. Right? So it's solely on how great their products or services are that they're almost incomparable completely to anyone else's, and just untouchable and so widely used completely in the industry that it's hardly even imaginable or not conceivable by the deep value the product or service provides to the customer, that it's very, very hard to see that the customer or consumer will consume somewhere else besides that product. This comprises all the best values you would want to invest really in a business. This is why I love to buy businesses like this, because the only goal, let me tell you right now, the only goal to investing, and it's all you need to know, is you put down money now so you can get more money on later on. That's all there is about investing. Now, you can see that it's not actually so different from large growth businesses, because they have to be extremely strong businesses and ones to scale and wants to already be scaling. And the only difference between a predictable company is that while the money return in sure part will be the same as the large growth, the best way to go about it is to think and see first if the business on the large growth category first is on as it's so predictable, as it's on a predictable category of a company. Right. So let me repeat this. The best way to go about this is when you're first looking at a business and you see that it's starting to be a large growth, see if it's first a predictable company. Very first. If it's a predictable company, the large growth can come in afterwards. Predictable company is essential because it's predictable. Whatever it's doing right now, it doesn't have to change the world, because it's very unlikely. Look, in order for a company to change the world, you need to have a very unique person. And 98% of everyone in the world doesn't want to strive for ambitious success to change a lot of things. So I rather go with the odds, right? And the whole point of investing is put down money on to get more money on. I know that the odds in my favor, not invest in always the same thing, but invest relatively mostly a lot in the same thing, and that are changing still different things. The only difference between predictable, right, is that while the money in sure part will be the same, you're looking at a business that is on large growth, you want to see then that it's predictable. Then afterwards, see if it has a lot of growth potential for the very long term. But in this case, that's for large growth, right? So you have predictable. Large growth is really just predictable mixed with large growth, right? But what makes the distinction between just predictable? Well, in this case, the growth potential is already sure on the part that they're making money already, and they're going to continue to do so in the future in just making the products that they're doing and are continuing to do it and continuing to make better as usual as they've always been. And the big difference though is that predictable companies might not have the same growth increment as a large growth company, but not because of its sector or industry, but because of its sole business, of its what its business is about, it's comprised about, and what they're selling. And additionally, slightly, of course, there does go some play with industry, but it's most of all with the business. So 80% mostly because of its sole business. Let me give you an example. This is a chocolate store. Look at all those people. Those are the type of businesses you should look at. That it's always packed, open at the front door. People are buying this product and this product, and then they come again. It's a reoccurring cash business. Like every year, a year later they made 15 billion. The year after they made 18 billion. After they made 23 billion. Afterwards 23. Afterwards 26 billion. Afterwards 27. And then afterwards 24. And afterwards 30 billion. Look, this is about 8 years. They made about 100% of their money in about 8 years, right? Not as much compared to the large growth, but still, this is a predictable business. It's such a cinch that they're just, these are money making machines, really. It just easily keeps coining money. And look at all these people packed in. These people are going to pack in different types of products and want to buy those products because they love them, and they will not go anywhere else. They would literally drive probably 30 minutes or an hour just to get the same thing they bought last time or a different product, and they wouldn't go anywhere else. Those are the type of businesses you want to invest in, right? That's for a retail store, but these type of businesses exist anywhere in any industry. Technology, communication services, financials like banks, consumer defense, healthcare, consumer discretionary, consumer retail, information technology, that's more in the industry. And yeah, that's like pretty much it. Why not energy? Right? I didn't say energy, I didn't say real estate, I didn't say basic materials, and I didn't say utilities. Well, first of all, utilities and basic materials are commodities. So they're not as predictable, and they're very, very high on capital expenditures. And they don't make that sort of like reassuring growth, and they're not businesses that you can say with a certainty that they're going to keep making. Now, I would say like if it's something that you really, really understand, because this isn't just about me. It's something that the whole point of investing is something that that you're very competent at. So if you understand a lot energy and you know this company can make a lot of money, then by all means do it. If you understand an oil company, buy it, right? There's no bad investments. All the point of investing, remember, is just to put down money now to get more money later on, right? It's just something that I personally don't understand so accurately compared to many other companies. And I rather try to filter the best companies I can think of and only filter maybe 5 of those best companies so I can have them, right? I know 20 great companies, but I want to filter 5 of the best of them, right? And I want to filter 3 of them, which will make them the best in the world. That's the way that I go about it. And I do this per sector.